It was one of those long, endless drives across the interstate, the kind of road where you lose track of time and the horizon never seems to end. I'd been on the road for hours, the dim glow of my headlights casting eerie shadows on the empty landscape. My body ached, the exhaustion starting to settle in, and all I could think about was finding a place to sleep. That's when I saw the sign: Hollow Pines Motel, flickering like a dying star in the distance, hidden behind a copse of trees. The place looked like it hadn't seen a coat of paint in decades, but at this point, I wasn't picky. A roof over my head for the night was all I needed. I pulled into the parking lot, the gravel crunching under my tires. The air smelled musty, damp, like it had rained recently, but the ground was dry. A rusty old sign on the front desk said, "Ring bell for service." I rang it 3 times before the door creaked open. Out stepped the manager, an old man whose thin gray hair clung to his scalp like it had given up on ever being neat. His eyes were the worst part. Sunken, bloodshot, and too wide, like they could see through everything. He smiled when he saw me, but the smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Room for the night?" His voice rasped like old paper being torn. "Yeah," I said, trying not to sound too desperate. "Just need a bed." He studied me for a long moment, his gaze lingering too long like he was trying to figure me out. Then, with a sudden motion, he slid a key across the counter. The number on the tag was 13. "Room 13, he said, his voice low as if sharing some ancient secret. "Unlucky number for some, lucky for others." I nodded, feeling a strange chill crawl up my spine. There was something off about the man, but I couldn't put my finger on it. I took the key, thanked him, and made my way to the room. The hallways of the motel were dark and narrow, the walls lined with peeling wallpaper that seemed to shift when I looked away. I reached the door to my room, my hand trembling slightly as I slid the key into the lock. The door creaked open with an unsettling groan, revealing the dim, dusty room beyond. It was small, musty, and cheap. The bed was unmade, the sheets a faded yellowish white. A single lamp flickered above, casting long shadows across the room. I set my bag down and collapsed on the bed, hoping sleep would come quickly, but sleep didn't come. Not immediately. Around midnight, I heard it. A tap on the door. Soft, almost tentative, like someone trying to be discreet. My heart pounded in my chest, and I froze. Who could be knocking at this hour? Slowly, I approached the door, my hand hovering over the knob. "Is there something you need?" I called through the wood. There was a pause. Then the voice of the manager came from the other side, low and strange, like a whisper in the dark. "Room 13 isn't for everyone. You should leave before it's too late." A shiver ran through me, but I shook my head, trying to brush off the unease. "I'm fine. Just go back to sleep," I muttered. I heard the faint shuffle of footsteps retreating down the hallway, then silence. That's when I realized it wasn't just the old manager who was watching me. I hadn't heard the faint hum of the old TV in the corner. I hadn't noticed the odd sound of the air conditioning unit running or the stale smell of the room. Now every little thing seemed off. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows stretched unnaturally long. I turned toward the small window, hoping a glimpse of the outside world would calm my racing heart. But when I looked, I saw the manager standing outside, just staring up at me through the glass. His eyes gleamed in the dim light, his lips curling into that smile again, the one that didn't reach his eyes. Panic seized me, and I rushed to pull the blinds down, but the moment I did, the door rattled violently as if something or someone was trying to break in. I backed away from the door, my breath coming in shallow gasps. The doorknob twisted. The lock clicked, but I wasn't sure for how much longer. Suddenly, I heard it, his voice louder this time, almost a chant. "Room 13. Room 13. Room 13?" I ran to the phone on the nightstand, but it was dead. No dial tone. I could hear his footsteps now. Slow, deliberate, creeping up the hall. Then just as quickly they stopped. Silence. I didn't know what to do. I grabbed my things, heart racing, but when I turned to leave, the door wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. Frantically, I pounded on the walls, screaming for help, but the only sound that returned was that damn voice echoing in the hall. Room 13. You'll never leave. Not until it's your time. I spun around, my mind unraveling as the room seemed to shift and distort. The wallpaper was crawling, the shadows moving closer, and then from the corner of the room I saw it. The manager, his face twisted in a grotesque grin, stepping out from the shadows. "You should have listened," he rasped, as the world around me began to darken. "No one leaves room 13. Not alive, at least." The door opened behind me with an eerie squealing sound, and before I could run, I was consumed by darkness. And then, just before I lost consciousness, I heard it again, his whisper. "Room 13. The curse is passed on." When I woke up, the motel was empty. The parking lot was gone, replaced by trees, thick and dense. I was alone, and somehow I knew. The manager was still out there waiting for the next traveler to arrive.